My name is Caleb, I'm 32, and until a few months ago, I lived a relatively quiet life. I'm not flashy, never been the type to post expensive dinners or vacation pics. I work in IT, I rent a modest apartment, and I drive an old Toyota that rattles when I go over 50. Most of my money sits quietly in savings, because I've learned that in families like mine, wealth doesn't make you respected, it makes you a target. My Aunt Margot was the only person in my family who really got me. She didn't care that I skipped Christmas parties or forgot birthdays. She called me her little lighthouse, someone quiet and steady in the chaos. When I was younger, she used to bring me art supplies, books, even old laptops just to see what I'd do with them. While the rest of the family rolled their eyes or asked why I was still single, she just smiled and said, "Let him be. He's watching more than he's saying." Margot never married. She didn't have kids, just 2 nephews, me and my cousin Evan, and a mountain of real estate money from smart investments in the early 2000s. She wore thrifted cardigans and carried the same purse for 10 years, but her bank account would have made most hedge fund managers blush. And she knew exactly what kind of snakes her family was. The cancer came fast, stage 4 pancreatic. She told me in her garden one evening, sipping weak chamomile tea. "I've got maybe 6 months," she said. "I'd rather spend them pulling weeds than in a hospital bed." I stayed with her more and more after that. Not because she asked, she didn't need to. We'd just sit in silence sometimes. She told me stories I'd never heard, shared recipes she never wrote down, and in one quiet moment said, "I left you something. Don't tell anyone. Don't even look for it right away. Just trust me." When she passed, the funeral was small. I gave the eulogy. Evan showed up late and left early, muttering something about a meeting in Miami. My mom cried harder than I thought she would, probably because she realized Margot's money wasn't automatically coming her way. The will was read 2 weeks later by her longtime attorney, Mr. Langley, a man who wore cufflinks shaped like chess pawns and spoke like every sentence had already been carefully rehearsed. The family was packed into the conference room like it was a reality show finale. Evan sat there with his leg bouncing, already acting like he was about to inherit the world. My mom whispered prayers under her breath. And then Mr. Langley opened the folder and said, "To my nephew Caleb, I leave the sum of $1 million, held in a private trust account at Bellstone Bank. The details have been provided separately. This is my wish, and I expect it to be honored." Dead silence. You could hear someone's cheap perfume fighting with the air conditioner. My mom blinked. Evan laughed, and then said, "There must be a mistake. Margot always said she'd split everything evenly. You're saying he gets the whole thing?" Mr. Langley didn't even flinch. "That is exactly what I'm saying." Evan stood up, face red. "This is ridiculous. I'm calling my lawyer." "Please do," Mr. Langley replied calmly, closing the folder. "But I'd advise you to read the date on the document first. This was updated 6 weeks before Margot passed, and it's ironclad. You're free to contest it, but I assure you, it won't go well." That night, I didn't celebrate. I didn't buy a car or a plane ticket. I just walked the long way home and thought about all the nights Margot had told me to stay patient. "You don't need to be loud to win," she used to say. "You just need to be ready when the time comes." And I was ready. The next morning, I followed the instructions she left, coded references, familiar phrases, even a dumb inside joke we shared about passwords, and quietly transferred the money into a separate private account. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even tell my closest friend. I acted like nothing had happened, because I knew Evan wasn't done. Sure enough, last week, he showed up at my place. No call, no text, just knocked like we were close. He was wearing a smug grin and holding a thick manila envelope. "Hey, C," he said, using a nickname he never once used in his life. "Mind if I come in?" I didn't move. "What's that?" "Oh, this." He waved the envelope like it was a pizza menu. "Let's just say the family decided to take care of some unfinished business. We had the will reviewed by a, let's say, more aggressive firm. Turns out, Aunt Margot was confused near the end. They found some documentation that puts things back the way they should have been." I stared at him. He smiled wider. "The million's ours now, bro. But I'm not a monster. I'm thinking we give you, like, 50 grand as a thank you. You know, for being a good sport." I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. "Are you sure about that?" His grin faltered just a bit. "What? Just make sure you're sure. Because once you try to take something that doesn't belong to you, things tend to go sideways fast. He raised an eyebrow and turned without another word. Drove off in his rental Audi with tinted windows and a vanity plate that said Evan wins. 3 days later, I got the alert. Someone had attempted to access the account. Not just access it, empty it. They tried everything. A forged power of attorney, a fake ID in my name, even some poorly doctored court documents claiming I was mentally unfit to manage my finances. But the second they walked into the branch and tried to execute the transfer, the manager followed protocol, which, thanks to a little advanced planning with Mr. Langley, included a mandatory biometric scan and a silent alert sent directly to my phone and to Langley's office. And on the screen in front of them, right after their access was denied, was a message I'd asked to be programmed months ago. It said, "You really thought it would be that easy?" That's when things started unraveling faster than they could react. And that's exactly where things get interesting. The manager at Bellstone, a no-nonsense woman named Judith with icy silver hair and sharper eyes than a hawk, watched Evan and his lawyers squirm in silence after the message appeared. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. The screen had locked, the fake documents had been flagged, and in a small glass-walled office just 20 feet away, 2 plainclothes security officers were already on their way. Evan, ever the fast talker, tried to salvage it. "There's clearly been a misunderstanding," he stammered, flashing a strained smile. "I'm just helping my cousin with some estate logistics. Family business, you know how messy that gets." Judith gave a slow, deliberate blink. Then she stood. "Mr. Caldwell, right?" she said, her voice polite but cold enough to fog a window. "I believe you've just committed attempted wire fraud and forged legal documentation. That's not messy. That's federal." Evan looked like someone had drained all the blood from his face. His lawyer, who I later learned was some sketchy consultant he found online, stood frozen, clutching his briefcase like it might somehow shield him from the fallout. Judith didn't shout. She just stepped aside as the security officers entered, calm and professional. Evan tried to argue, then to plead, then to leave, but the doors had been locked. I watched the footage later. Yes, I got a copy of him being let out of the bank, still sputtering about how this was all a big mistake, trying to spin a story to the officers like he was the victim of some elaborate scam. He called me that night. I didn't answer. Then he called my mom. She did what she always does, panicked, cried, and tried to guilt me into fixing everything. "Caleb, just talk to him. He made a mistake. He didn't mean to steal from you. You know how desperate he's been since his app flopped." His app, right. The one he raised money for on Kickstarter and spent mostly on marketing and networking trips to Ibiza. The same app that never launched because he couldn't find the right developer. Funny how that works. "I'm not fixing this," I told her. "And you shouldn't either. But he's your cousin. He tried to steal $1 million. There was a pause, then the sound of her sob catching in her throat. "You've changed, Caleb." I didn't respond. Because no, I hadn't changed. They were just finally seeing the part of me Aunt Margot had seen all along. The part that didn't let people walk all over me. Didn't let family excuse betrayal. Over the next week, things spiraled. Fast. Evan was released pending investigation, but the charges were very real. Bellstone's legal team wasn't about to let it slide, and Mr. Langley had filed a cease and desist against Evan's so-called estate review team within 24 hours. Turns out, tampering with a deceased person's will is not just immoral, it's criminal. And in this case, it was being treated as attempted grand theft. My mom showed up at my door 3 days after the arrest. She looked tired. Her makeup was faded, her hair in a messy bun. She wasn't here to yell, for once. She just asked if we could talk. I let her in, made tea, sat across from her while she picked at a loose thread in her sleeve. "I didn't know he'd go that far," she said finally. "I did," I replied. She looked up, frowning. "Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you warn me?" "Because the last time I tried to warn you, you said I was jealous of Evan, that I should be more like him." She winced. "I didn't mean that. I was just, you've always been so quiet, Caleb. I didn't realize that I could take care of myself," I said, more sharply than I meant to. "That maybe Margot left me the money because I never expected it, because I didn't ask for it." Silence. She looked away, blinking quickly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I really am." I didn't respond right away, because part of me wanted to forgive her, and another part, one that had been ignored, overlooked, and brushed off for years, wasn't ready. And then she said something that threw me off completely. Your aunt left you more than just the money, didn't she? I froze. What do you mean? She shook her head slowly, like she was still working it out in her mind. When she was dying, I visited once. Just once. She barely spoke. But as I was leaving, she said, he'll know what to do with it. He'll protect it. I thought she meant the money. But now I wonder. She reached into her purse and pulled out an old key, rusted at the edges, with a small purple tag that said, MH, third drawer. She told me to give this to you one day. Said you'd understand. I took it, heart racing. MH, Margot's house. The third drawer. I hadn't gone back since the funeral. I couldn't bring myself to. But now I had to. Because whatever was in that drawer, Margot meant for me to find it after all this. And something told me it wasn't just about money anymore. I barely slept that night. I must have turned the key over in my hands 100 times, trying to decode it like it was a puzzle. MH, third drawer. It was typical Margot, never one for grand gestures or long-winded letters. She believed in symbols, subtlety. She always said if something mattered, you'd feel it before you understood it. The next morning, I drove out to her house. She lived just outside the city in a brick one-story with ivy creeping along the side like nature was slowly hugging it to sleep. Everything about the place looked exactly as she left it. The wind chimes she'd hung from the porch still tinkled in the breeze. Her ceramic cat statues still lined the front windowsill like an odd little army. And the key fit perfectly into the back door lock, the one she always said, only the people who matter should use. I stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of lavender and cedar, with just a whisper of dust. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to. The sunlight streamed through the lace curtains, just enough to guide me to the hallway, where she kept her old roll-top desk. That desk had been with her forever, since long before I was born. I remembered being a kid, sneaking peeks at it while she wrote checks or drafted letters in perfect cursive. The third drawer down on the right was always locked. She used to pat it and say, that one's for later. I guess later had finally come. I slipped the key into the lock. It clicked softly, like it had been waiting. I pulled the drawer open slowly. Inside was a leather folder, aged but well cared for. Beneath it, a flash drive in a labeled case. And under that, a photograph. It was of me, maybe 8 or 9 years old, sitting on the porch steps with Margot, both of us laughing at something just out of frame. On the back, in her looping handwriting, were the words, "You're the only one I ever trusted to see the whole board." I sat down in her old armchair, the folder resting on my knees, and opened it. Inside were bank statements, legal forms, and a single handwritten letter addressed to me. It started like this. If you're reading this, Evan did exactly what I expected him to do. I paused, letting the words settle. Margot hadn't just predicted it, she'd planned for it. She'd seen him coming from miles away, and she knew I'd need more than money to survive what was coming. She'd left behind documentation showing every transaction she made over the last 10 years. Purchases, investments, quiet loans she'd given out and never asked to be repaid. She'd even included a notarized statement about the updated will and the reason for the change, signed and witnessed long before her final days. But the real weight was on that flash drive. I slid it into my laptop. The folders were labeled meticulously. Insurance policy _ Evan loan forgiveness. Camden House _ transfer records. Recordings. It was the last one that made me stop breathing for a moment. I opened the recordings folder. There were 3 audio files, each time-stamped, each labeled with a date and the name, Evan. I clicked the first one. Margot's voice came through, soft but sharp, like a knife wrapped in velvet. "So, you're saying if I don't change the will back, you'll go to the press?" Then Evan's voice. Cocky. Familiar. "I'm saying this can all be easy, Annie. No drama. But come on. You and I both know Caleb won't know what to do with $1 million. Click. I shut the laptop. I sat there for a long time, hands shaking, staring at the screen. She had everything. Evidence of coercion, bribery, emotional manipulation. She hadn't just left me money. She'd left me the means to bury Evan if he ever tried to take it. But she hadn't done it herself. She'd left it to me, because she knew I'd wait until the exact right moment. And that moment was coming fast. Evan had crossed the line trying to drain the account. That alone was enough for legal action. But with the recordings and documents I now had, it wouldn't just be him going down. It could implicate his legal team, any bank employee who helped him, Maybe even a few family members who signed off on forged documents thinking they'd never get caught. I packed everything back into the folder, locked the drawer again, and left the house without looking back. By the time I got home, there were 8 missed calls from Evan, 3 voicemails, all increasingly frantic. The last one, he was almost whispering, "Caleb, we need to talk. Seriously, you don't understand what you're doing. This isn't just about money anymore. Please, call me back. I think I messed up." I stared at the phone for a long time. Then I opened my laptop, dragged the audio files into an encrypted backup folder, and forwarded a copy to Mr. Langley with a short message. "Activate the next step. Let them see what I've been holding." The next morning, everything started unraveling. I woke up to chaos. My phone was buzzing nonstop. Texts, calls, email alerts. Social media was lighting up too. My cousin Evan's name was trending locally, and not for anything good. Apparently, someone had leaked snippets of the recording from Margot's files to a small financial watchdog blog. It hadn't taken long for it to spread. The first clip? Evan smugly saying, "You and I both know Caleb won't know what to do with $1 million. The second? Margot asking coolly, "So you're threatening me?" It wasn't me who leaked it, by the way. I'd sent the recordings to Mr. Langley and asked him to handle it discreetly. He said, "Leave it to me." The man was like a chess grandmaster in a courtroom, quiet, calculated, and deadly with paperwork. By the time I finished my coffee, my cousin's world had begun to cave in. Apparently, his lawyer had panicked and turned on him immediately, offering up a statement to the police in exchange for immunity. Turns out, they'd used Margot's old letterhead, forged a signature from a scanned birthday card she'd once written, and claimed that she'd given Evan control of her accounts in her final days. Sloppy, arrogant, and completely traceable, Bellstone Bank had already flagged the entire incident. Their fraud department launched an internal investigation, and every bank Evan had ever worked with started quietly reviewing his past transactions. He had no idea just how deep the hole went. Later that afternoon, I got a call from a local reporter. She'd heard that I was the Caleb named in the inheritance dispute and asked if I had any comment. I declined politely. I didn't need to be part of the circus, but it confirmed what I'd suspected. This wasn't going to stay a private family issue. Evan had made it public when he tried to use a fake legal team and falsified documents to steal $1 million. The media just gave it a spotlight. My mom called again that night. "Caleb," she said. Her voice was trembling. "He's going to lose everything." The police came to his apartment. He called me crying. He said, "You've ruined him." I paused, then calmly replied, "I didn't ruin him, Mom. He did that to himself. I just stopped him from ruining me." She went quiet. For once, she didn't have a rebuttal. Just a soft, worn-out sigh. I could tell she was tired. Tired of the drama, tired of the consequences, tired of realizing her golden boy wasn't golden after all. "Do you hate us?" she asked after a long pause. That question caught me off guard. "No," I said. "I just finally stopped pretending you were protecting me when you weren't." There was another pause. "I didn't know," she whispered. "You didn't want to know," I corrected. And that was the last time we spoke for a while. A few weeks later, I received a formal letter from the state attorney's office. Evan had been formally charged with attempted fraud, forgery, and financial coercion. The DA wasn't playing around. They had everything: the forged documents, the recordings, even security footage from the bank. His plea deal involved house arrest, 5 years of probation, and mandatory restitution. But the real punishment wasn't legal. It was social. Evan's business contacts cut ties overnight. His app's startup investors, those few that hadn't already sued him, publicly announced their disassociation. He went from acting like a tech entrepreneur to selling his watch collection just to pay his attorney. His name was toxic, his reputation obliterated. Meanwhile, I sat quietly at the center of the storm. I didn't flaunt my victory. I didn't post vague status updates or passive-aggressive tweets. I just kept doing what I'd always done, working quietly, watching closely. I moved into a new apartment, modest but mine. I invested part of the money into a scholarship fund under Margot's name, specifically for students in underserved areas who wanted to study computer science. The rest I left untouched. I had no plans to blow through it. Margot didn't leave me that money so I could become someone else. She left it so I could stay who I was, without needing to beg for permission. About 3 months later, I returned to her house one last time. It had been cleaned, maintained, but untouched. Mr. Langley helped me transfer ownership smoothly. She'd left everything to me, including the house, her personal journals, and all the family photos she kept hidden from the rest of them. I walked through each room slowly, feeling the weight of her presence still clinging to the corners. In the living room, tucked behind a row of dusty mystery novels, I found a small, sealed envelope. On the front, in her handwriting, was just one word: if. I opened it. Caleb, if you're reading this, then you did what I expected, but not what I hoped. I hoped Evan would prove me wrong. I hoped your mother would finally see you for who you are. But if they didn't, I knew you'd be ready. You always saw the board. You always played the long game. You were never loud, but you were always listening. Don't let this make you cold. Don't let them turn you bitter. Keep your hands clean and your heart soft. And if you ever wonder why I left it all to you, it's because you were the only one who never asked. Love, Margot. I sat on the floor and cried. Not out of relief, not out of pride, but because I missed her. Because even after everything, all the drama and betrayal and revenge, I would have traded it all for one more quiet evening on her porch, sipping tea and watching the sun go down. In the end, I didn't destroy my cousin. He destroyed himself. All I did was hold up the mirror. And finally, he had to look. As for the rest of my family, they stayed distant. A few half-hearted texts over holidays, maybe a birthday message from my aunt asking how I was doing with all that money. But it never felt real. It never felt honest. And I was okay with that. Because for the first time in my life, I had something they couldn't touch: peace. And no amount of inheritance, manipulation, or fake smiles could ever buy that.